So this is our last semester, wow. This is our last class of the semester. For many of you, it's probably the last semester as well. Because of that, I want to talk about App Store publishing. Reason why? Because I very firmly believe that those of you who are in this class should be publishing software. There are very few things that you can do in education or even after that will teach you as much as having a live product with users. So I want to talk about different ways of getting applications on Apple's App Store, because that's the most effective way of getting applications out and about, specifically so that you can start getting that application in users' hands and having an active user base. Even if you are not planning on using an application to feed many hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of users, you just have it up there as a portfolio piece. That is going to be a very useful tool for you. Friends on the art side of campus know very, very well that having a bunch of very good pieces of work is the very best way that you can sell yourself. Either that as an employee to an employer, as a proprietor of an open source community, as a entrepreneur to potential clients. Having examples of your work that are very, very good and easy to get at is an amazing tool. All of you guys should be publishing something. So let's talk about that. First, you need to get in the developer program. If you haven't done that already, go to developer.apple.com/programs. You have to have an Apple ID to do this. In order to publish stuff on Apple's App Store, even stuff that's free, you need to pay 99 bucks. Considering you're probably paying 15 to 20 bucks to sit in that chair right now, that's okay. Pay 99 bucks, it's gonna be worth it to you. So you can actually put your stuff on Apple's Store. Gives you some credibility, makes it a lot easier for people to obtain your software that you'd like to show it to. So just go ahead and do it. You can mess around with things like TestFlight and stuff like that. Don't worry about it. Just publish on the store. Yes? 25 bucks. Yep. And for Apple, I believe it's $99 a year. For Google, it's 25 bucks lifetime. So I think that's what it is. May have changed. But well worth the money in either case. So what you actually need to enroll is available as part of the enrollment, obviously. But you have a choice to make, either to enroll as an individual or enroll as an organization. Enrolling as an organization is a pain, and probably is not needed unless you already have a well-established organization. You have to have a DUNS number, legal status, all that kind of stuff. Just because you're enrolling as an individual doesn't mean that you're the only person on the team. Even if you own a company and have several people that are going to be on the team, if it's a fairly new company, just enroll as an individual. It works just fine. The process is a lot shorter as well. Once you actually enroll, you'll have access to developer.apple.com. It will look something like this. You see that I'm logged in as Matthew Stoker from Pixio LLC. That's because this is the one that I have. It's the only one I can show you. You'll get access to several different components here. You notice that you have a section called People. Even if you are enrolled as an organization, you'll have this link, because you can create teams of people in order to work on your applications. And in fact, you can be part of several teams as well. You associate your Apple ID with a team ID. So that's fairly flexible. You also have access to certificates, identifiers, and profiles. These are the signing certificates, provisioning profiles, and user identifiers and application identifiers. These are what are used to uniquely identify the applications that you're building and allow you to sign code. Xcode will interact with this system automatically in some cases. As you work with distribution profiles, though, you may have to do some parts of this manually. A lot of this process used to be handled via web interfaces and an application called Application Loader. All that stuff has been kind of done away with, and it's all done from the point of view of Xcode at this point. And the way that they have implemented it is you can build code for debug, you can build code for release, and you can build code for distribution. Debug and release are kind of what you expect. Distribution, you're actually building the code in release mode with a setup for Xcode to build your application for distribution via the App Store. And it starts that process. So that's the building of the code. But the part that you're actually going to have to do first before you can really start handing anything over to Apple is the marketing part. So the last link is to iTunes Connect. iTunes Connect is the name of the service that Apple uses for music and movies and everything else that goes on the App Store. You'll have a customized experience as a developer putting applications on the store, but that is still handled through iTunes Connect. So this is the developer portal. iTunes Connect is a separate piece. So with your signing certificates, we talked about these a little bit already, but just to remind you, signing certificates are a public-private key. The private key is found on your development computer. The public key is what you give to Apple and everyone else has to be able to decrypt the binary and verify who are you. The provisioning profile controls what devices the application can be installed on, and depending on the kind of provisioning profile, you can either have a limited set of devices as a developer profile, a set of devices that are provisioned by a company, that's an enterprise profile, or you can have a distribution provisioning profile, which is good to be installed on any device, which is the one that is used for the App Store. So those are the three different kinds: developer, enterprise, distribution. You also have ad hoc profiles. You'll use those in some limited cases. I find they're just a pain and annoying. But you can use them with services like TestFlight, which I won't be talking about today, but look into TestFlight. It's usually used for alpha and beta tests of applications. So your signing certificate is actually found in the keychain on your Mac. It will have a public certificate with a little drop down for the private key. The way that you create that certificate is by using Apple as a signing authority. And they have a nice little tutorial showing how to create that certificate. The provisioning profile is essentially created by Xcode for you during development. For distribution, again, they have kind of a walkthrough process for making those provisioning profiles. They do expire, and it depends on the kind of profile for how long they last. They're tied to a program's bundle identifier. And depending on what requirements you have for your program, you can build a bundle identifier that matches all of your applications. But some specific technologies require that a profile be paired with exactly one application. Things like notifications are one of the big ones. Game Center is another. Some of Apple's technologies require that. But it's mostly a list of devices and a connection to a provisioning or to a signing certificate. The process is you build your application in code. It results in an unencrypted binary. Xcode, as part of the build process, takes that binary and all of the associated assets and packages them together into a single encrypted package using your signing certificate and your provisioning profile. The provisioning profile becomes part of that packet. Then you have an encrypted application that can actually be deployed to hardware. On your development Mac, you have the certificate and the private key and the provisioning profile. On the installed device, you will have the public key, but will not have the private key. That's how it works. iTunes Connect is what you're going to use to manage the book cover on your book. This is all of the marketing-related information having to do with your application. So your application will contain an icon that is used on the Springboard to be able to, it's not called Springboard anymore, on the main screen to show your application and its title. But that's pretty much the only advertising information that's found in the package itself. Everything having to do with how a user is able to shop for your application, find your application, is all done through iTunes Connect and has its own set of data. So this is the interface to iTunes Connect. This is a bit old, but it looks essentially the same as this. You have a section for your own applications, as well as a bunch of information about applications that you have already posted. I'll talk in detail about my apps, but let me talk about these other ones a little bit as well. You have analytics and sales and trends. Sales and trends have to do with purchasing of applications. That also includes free applications, how often they're downloaded. App analytics is a very limited set of data that Apple collects in terms of how many users are opening your application. If you need more detailed information on analytics for your app, like who is using what parts of your application and how often, you'll want to look into other services that provide that, like Flurry or Fabric, libraries that you can use. I did a homegrown analytics system at one point. It's not worth the effort. Don't do it. Use a library. You can also get payments and financial reports if you're going to be selling your applications. You don't have to sell your applications. But if you do choose to do so, there are some additional agreements that you sign with Apple such that they can act on your behalf to sell to the consumer in multiple different countries, multiple different currencies, multiple different tax environments. Apple insulates you from all of that. And they take 30%, you take 70%. And absolutely worth it. They open up your market quite a bit. It is a heavy tax to pay, but the exposure is huge. And they give you a lot for the 30% that they take. So it's a good thing. IAD, don't worry about that. Nobody else does either. Users and roles. Apple tries to split up the roles for your app, for your organization in terms of what's being handled in different parts of your organization for your app. They build this with the idea that you have a somewhat large organization and you have technical people, you have marketing people, and you have business and financial people. And they need to have different roles and access to different parts of the system. So that's what that's all for. Just sign yourself up as all of them. It works great. All of your agreements with Apple are stored here in iTunes Connect, so you can review them. And these agreements are essentially what set up that structure of what can be done and what can't be done and what Apple is able to do on your behalf. The agreements are huge and they change often. In the end, though, if you want to sell on the App Store, you have to sign them. So do what you will. This is the My Apps section. This is a bunch of random apps that they happen to choose for when I access this system. I still don't quite know how they do their filtering. It doesn't appear to be by time or by version number or by some kind of alphabetical listing. It's just like random. So whatever. When you first access this screen, it should be empty. You can click on the little plus button at the top left corner. That will give you a screen that looks something like this. And they're asking you to create an app. Specifically, they're asking you for what platform and the name of the application. This is when you actually establish what the name of your application is going to be as shown to the user. And these names need to be unique. So it might be that the name that you want for your application is missing or is already reserved by someone else, rather. So you can create the marketing definition for your application before your application is finished. From this point forward, I think you have about 90 days before Apple says, hey, you haven't uploaded a binary, we're taking this name back. So feel free to go through this process early. They ask for the primary language. That is not the primary programming language. This is the spoken language. And they ask for a bundle identifier. The bundle identifier is associated with your application. You can't change it, but it is an identifier that no one is going to see. It just uniquely identifies the application. The bundle identifier is associated with the marketing name of your application and what you have on the main screen. So don't worry too much about having a bundle identifier that doesn't match your app. That's the case with several of our apps. They also ask you for a SKU. This is just a unique number that you can use to identify the application. It is essentially the primary key in the table of financial records. So put in there whatever you want. We use GIDs, globally unique identifiers, universally unique identifiers. Just throw one of those in there. Works great. So once you've done that, that creates one of these entries in the My Apps section, and then you can start adding information to it. So the information that they ask for is shown here in app information. This is the app information for a product called Mobile Studio. And they will ask you for several URLs. One of them is a privacy policy. If your application has a privacy policy, with what you do with user information, you can provide that there. They ask for general information for the application that fills in those fields that you have already put in and are not changeable. But then they ask you for several things that are changeable. For example, the category of the application. This one happens to have categories of productivity and business. If you choose some of the larger categories, you'll also have subcategories. So when you choose game, it'll ask you what kind of game. Moving forward, there we go. Each particular version of an application will have a set of screenshots associated with it, as well as an icon. So those things you're going to need to make for your application. With the icon, make sure you have that icon available in many different sizes. Try to have a large version of the icon that you can make smaller if you need to. It's best to make those icon assets directly from the original vector file that you used to make the icon. But again, don't let that be a barrier for you getting things out on the store. With screenshots, they're most easily made from a real physical device that you deploy the application to and then make screenshots by pushing the power button and the home button at the same time. Then you can put those on your computer and actually upload them. If you don't have a physical device, you can also do it from the simulator. They require that you have screenshots for a few different screen sizes. They've changed the requirements on what specific sizes are needed for each one and under what conditions. If you say that your application is installable on iPad, I believe you have to provide iPad screenshots. And you also need to provide screenshots for at least one phone-sized device. I believe it's iPhone 5. But again, they may have changed those requirements. But you will need to make those screenshots, and that can take quite a bit of time to get really nice-looking screenshots. So plan for that. And hold on to those screenshots in like a marketing package for your application that you keep near its code. In addition to that, you'll also be providing a description. This is the set of text that is associated with the application when it's viewed on the store. You also provide keywords and possibly a support URL and a marketing URL. The support URL, I believe, is required. The marketing URL is not. I think the support URL is the only URL you have to provide. Again, changes to requirements may have either relaxed or restricted that, but it's a good idea. You have a web presence for your application. This does not need to be something that is done at this time. This is just the URL that you're providing where it will eventually be. And you can put something together really, really easily using WordPress and an application theme. And all this stuff is really easy to put together. You can find web space for like $5 a month. So not much of a barrier. So have a web presence. It's good because then when you are showing your application to people as a portfolio piece, it also has a website associated with it and they can get a hold of you. Spend some time particularly with the name of your application and the icon. Those two things are the most important parts of your marketing message about your application. People do judge books by their cover. They will not read your book if the cover is not interesting. So do a good job of it. The description, you probably will get one sentence in or even just a few words in before people will stop reading it. So make that first sentence count. You should be saving all of this information along with your application. Personally, I think it should be part of the repo. So it's versioned along with the rest of the app because it's an important part of the app. So hold on to all that stuff. I already talked about icon. You also provide them with a copyright notice. That's as simple as saying what year and to who. And you give them a contact person for the application. Do put in good information here where they can actually contact you. If you're very lucky, they will be featuring your application, and that would be very sad if they couldn't get a hold of a person to talk to them about that. You can work with things like Game Center and other services that are also provided at this time. But for an application that you are just putting up on the store and trying to sell without too many bells and whistles to it, like a game, it's really pretty straightforward. And they will ask you for more contact information. This is specifically for application review. The review process that Apple goes through is what's referred to as a curated review. There is actually a human that will take a look at your application. They have a bunch of automated tests that they run on the application before it even arrives in Apple's hands. It's part of the system that Xcode uses when you select distribution as the build target. It will make sure that you have an icon associated with your application, that there's an entitlements file associated with it. That the application is being properly encrypted using a sign-in certificate, and a whole battery of other tests that Apple keeps adding to this. Everything that they can automate, they put into that system, such that they can protect the actual humans from having to go digging through all that stuff. So you can put some notes to the reviewer here. Remember that reviewer is going to be looking at tens or hundreds or even thousands of applications during the day, don't tell them stuff they don't need to know. In fact, if you leave the notes field empty, that's probably best. So that gets your application up on the store. I mentioned versioning of things. You should be versioning your code. This is something of value. If it's up on the store and you're actually selling it, it has a monetary value, has a provable monetary value. You should be backing that up and protecting it in the same way that you would protect any of your personal property. So one of the easiest ways to create a backup that is also useful for other things is using a source code management system like Git. You can version your code. You can go back to different versions of your code. This is also very important for maintenance. If someone says that there's a bug with your application, you need to be able to roll back to the exact version of the code that you handed to Apple to be able to find out what that bug is. Because you're going to be working on version 1.1.0 while they are talking about version 1.0.3, and you need to make an update to 1.0.3 to fix it. And then forward port that into your newer version of your code. You have to be able to move around inside that versioning system. So use something like Git to do it. If you haven't been doing that in your educational career so far, start. It's a very important tool. And don't use anything other than Git, because everything other than Git is garbage. Use Git. Not to put too fine a point on that. I've used Subversion. It's not good. In addition to that, you can make zips of the code. I used to do that. I don't really do it anymore. I just use Git. But a very, very good idea is using another off-site backup. You can use a versioning system for this as well. You can put stuff up on GitHub. You can use one of the other services that utilize Git connectivity. Or even better, set up your own installation of GitLab, which is a wonderful product. That's usually enough for you, as long as that computer that is storing the code is physically separate from you. Don't just have it on your laptop. Laptops get stolen, laptops get corrupted, laptops get broken. And don't put it on a computer sitting in your house. Your laptop and the computer in your house are in the same house. Houses do burn down. My house burned down in 2009. So don't keep your stuff elsewhere. I had some backups offsite, thankfully. One of the easiest ways to do that is using a Git repository that is off-site. But having a local backup is also really helpful. I have a picture of a time capsule here. What time capsule will do for you is every single hour, it will store a backup of your computer. They do it in a really cool system that keeps versioning such that it will just keep versions of all of your files as it goes through time. So if you haven't committed for a few hours and you lost that code, you can at least still get it from like 47 minutes ago, which is really helpful. That has saved me time and time again. They cost about $300, completely worth it. Completely worth it. It's definitely something to look into. I find it to be a very fine product. You can also have a bunch of other services that provide something similar. So do back things up. This is a thing of value. Another thing that you may consider, I find that if you are doing your development effort along with other people, you'll get a lot of benefit out of just having other people in the effort. Because you're not going to have a consistent level of energy throughout time. If you have multiple people, as life ebbs and flows, you have multiple people that are concerned about the product. So I highly suggest that you consider forming a limited liability company, an LLC. There are a bunch of different business structures. The LLC is one of the easiest ways to create a company as a group. You can do it by visiting corporations.utah.gov. In order to create the entity, you file a set of legal documents. You do not need a lawyer to do this because you fill in a set of forms on corporations.utah.gov and it generates the legal documents for you. The articles of organization is what they're called. So it's surprisingly easy to do this. You can create a company in an afternoon, and it will cost you about $50. Not a big deal. Once you've actually created a company, it's helpful because then you can go and get a checking account in the name of the company using their tax identifier. So you're a real company at that point. If you need to change your structure later, LLCs are really easy to convert to S Corps and C Corps and whatever. So don't get too deep into it. What's really nice about a limited liability company is that the tax situation on it is really easy. It just kind of flows through to the people who are the partners in the limited liability company according to a percentage. So if you form a company with 3 people and each of you owns a third, the earnings or the expenses of the company, according to a tax perspective, will just be split 3 ways, exactly like that. So it's really pretty straightforward. You can even still keep doing your taxes with TurboTax or whatever. So it works pretty well. If you don't want to set up a company, you just want to kind of get this stuff done, forget about all this. Forget about the backups. Forget about the LLC. Forget about the checking account. Forget about the whatever else. Just get code online. Put something on the store. You know, these are all just great ideas, things that I think would be really helpful for you to consider as you're going through the process about this. But getting something started is the hardest part. Just sign up for an account. Start putting together your marketing material for your app, and you'll find that you'll just get it done. And then you'll have something on the store to show people. And that's a very powerful thing. That's one of the reasons why I do the final project in the class, why I've structured it the way that I've structured it. I firmly believe that that can be a tool for you, for getting a better job, for starting up your own company and being able to find clients, having a history of having wonderful products that you've put together. It really showcases what you can do. And what better way to do it than to do it in an official capacity? You know, you have to sell yourself. It's a very important thing as you go into the world and do these things. Those of you who are professionals, I hope are nodding your head about this. This is something that is important. Having these things is just as important as having a good resume, and I'd say probably more. Somebody handed me kind of a mediocre resume, but they showed me this amazing application that they built. I'd kind of push the resume to the side and say, tell me more about the application, how you built it, what part were you involved in, you know? That's going to be the thing that's going to sell you. So use that opportunity. 2 birds, 1 stone. And you're getting credit out of the class for this. So do a great job on your final product, on your final project, and post the thing. I think it's wonderful. I'm an entrepreneur. I love being an entrepreneur and an engineer. I love to solve problems. I love to see how you can cleverly utilize phones, tablets, software in order to make people's lives easier, in order to enable new opportunities, how to fix things about life that are broken and make them better. That's what we're all here for in the end. So don't just build your stuff in isolation. Make things of value and then see if anybody cares about them. Put yourself out there. This is the way to do it. And it's not as complicated as you might think. One thing that I want to extend to everyone in the class, continue to send me email after class. If you have questions about business structure and taxes and legal stuff and all that, I am not a tax accountant. I am not a lawyer. But I'm happy to give you my 2 cents on the experiences that I've had. I can only tell you about what I know. But I'm always happy to answer those questions, anytime. Went out to lunch just 3 weeks ago with a guy that used to attend one of our student groups, actually, and helped him out with the setting up of a company. So please, talk to me. Love to talk about these kinds of things. So it's kind of what I've got for you today. I would go ahead and do a demo, but that is difficult. I did actually have a set of code that I needed to submit to the App Store that I considered doing as a demo today. I just couldn't figure out a good way to make it work. I'd never done it before, and I had these aspirations to actually show you a demo of putting something on the store. It's just not a good idea. But I promise, it's much easier than it used to be. This has been a really good course. I've really very much enjoyed coming and talking to you about these technologies. Apple is in a very good place with their hardware and their software. There's some good, healthy competition in the market. And there are a lot of correspondences between Apple's devices and their programming methodologies and other platforms, particularly Android. And you really can be utilizing the skills that you're gaining in this class in order to do some great things. I have students start companies every semester. I have students get jobs based on this class and the work that they do in this class every semester. And so I want you to have a larger view of this. Continue with your final project development after class. It will be an asset to you. And I'm always happy to help out. I also wanted to mention that the instructor evaluation documents that you make for class are not something that you just do and then they go into the ether. I pay very close attention to those. Tell me about what's been good in class. Tell me what's been bad in class. And I'll try to make things better. Those are quite important to me. So please fill them out and fill them out in detail. They are anonymized. I'm not going to know it's going to be that it's you if you say all kinds of bad things. So feel free to say bad things. Those are actually usually the most helpful. But please tell me about which things you enjoyed as well. What parts of the class were the most illuminating? The thing you're like, oh, I'm so glad that was taught in class. It was really the big topic for me. That's going to be really helpful information. I'm going to try to make myself available as much as I can between now and due date. I know everybody's schedules are hectic. I am a working professional, so I can't just do any hour. In fact, Sam is probably going to be more available than I am, so go to him first with any questions that you've got. But I will try to make myself available whenever I possibly can. And we'll just kind of do that by appointment. So good luck.